advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Hello, good evening. Welcome once again to another summer episode of Illuminati with Crip, and she's finally here. Yeah.
Beloved viewers, thank you so much for being patient and still watching our episode despite the absence of the brains, and thank you for bearing with the beauty
The
last week.
brawn. Okay. Speaking of brawn, well, Trix wasn't with us in our last show with Gang Badoy. Pity. She and Gang would have hit it off very well, especially since we talked about prison matters in Muntinlupa. Yeah. How she does literary workshop with inmates. Something that you can probably help her out on, since it's just a neighbor. No.
I would love to.
But the reason why Trix was absent was because she's been so busy shooting video of her own as well as on her. So Trix, can you stand up and show us your tan
No, I
that
think
you've
we can
acquired?
skip that part. But yes, I have been very busy shooting my performance art films, as well as being shot by a certain vitamin company.
Okay.
The name
As you
which
can see,
I cannot mention.
as you can see,
I didn't add.
she's wearing long sleeves. It's not because she got a tat, or did you? No, it's
I
because
might have.
she
My
says
whole
she's
left arm.
sunburnt daw.
I got your full face and body tattooed on
Oh,
mine.
terrific. But let's move on to our guest this evening. A very special guest. He's a single guest. He's married, but he's a single guest. A very good friend of both Trix and mine.
Yes,
A lifetime
very
friend.
dear to our hearts.
Also for her father and her mothers. Premier poet of the Philippines. Speaking on our topic tonight, which is International Poetry Festivals, of which he has had a voluminous experience.
Wow.
None other than, well, we call him Jimmy, but is officially Dr. Hemino. H for Henson Abad.
Thanks.
And I'm
Welcome,
sorry.
Mr. J.
Hi, Jim. Hello, Jim. Sorry, Jim, that our card gen cannot accommodate the, do you call that the tilde? Or an accent mark in the E, above the E in Hemino. It's Hemino, okay?
We don't want people saying Hemino.
Jimmy has been the latest of a long line of Filipino poets who are annually invited to very prestigious poetry festivals all over the world. And Jim just came back a couple of months ago from one such prestigious festival in Granada. Not Granada in Madre España, but Granada in Nicaragua. Okay. Can you tell us about your experience there, Jim?
Well, all I can say is it's an international poetry festival like that is always memorable. In this particular Nicaragua festival in Granada, you had about 90 poets from about 60 countries.
My goodness.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are divided into groups so that every night there is a poetry reading at the Plaza Independencia. Yeah. And the remarkable thing about it is the hundreds of people in the plaza, in the public square. The sound system is very good. And there's a big, whatever you call it, where
Video
you can,
screens.
Yeah, yeah,
Video
a
screens,
video
yeah, yeah.
screen.
Giant video screens.
And every time the poet comes on stage, these hundreds of people, they keep quiet. They're very attentive.
Yes.
Yeah, and when you're done, very appreciative.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's something you cannot forget. Yeah.
There is almost a reverential awe and admiration for poets. No?
Yes.
They seem to live
Very
poetry.
respectful.
That is right. In fact, in Managua, where I stayed overnight before Granada, my wife and I visited the monument to Ruben Darío.
Darío. Yeah.
Yes, it's a monument to a poet. Yeah. So that is how much they revere their
A
poets.
very, very famous poet of the Hispanic realm, who had the honor of being mentioned by no less than our own Nick Joaquin in his famous play, Portrait of the Filipino as an Artist,
Yes,
where he practically commends Ben Darío.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, there they revere one other poet, and he is still alive. He was there present every night, Ernesto Cardenal.
Cardenal, yes.
Absolutely.
Very popular and used to be a controversial figure in Latin America. He had the brush or a run-in with the Vatican because he was one of the early proponents of liberation theology, I believe.
Yes,
He was a Jesuit
that is right.
who wrote poetry but also became rather militant in his advocacy.
Yes, he was part of the Sandinista.
Yes, the Sandinistas.
Throughout the dictatorship there. Yeah. So, and up to now, very sturdy, vigorous.
In his
and
80s, I think. Late
Yes,
80s.
past 80.
Yeah,
Yeah, and of course he also performed on stage. Yeah.
It's wonderful to hear about such things happening elsewhere, because here in Manila, when we have poetry festivals, the only time I ever saw reverential awe operating among an audience was when Trixie Huco was doing performance poetry.
I would
The
not be
only time
surprised.
that I saw everyone was silent and agape, and their jaws were dropping. Wow.
Perhaps not because of the poetry. Maybe they were too busy staring at my legs.
The performance, yeah. That's why I'm telling you to stand up. So
No, that always happens with performance poetry.
yeah.
Yeah, the audience would really keep quiet
In this
and watch.
particular festival, this was last February, right?
How long
Jim?
was this festival?
Yeah.
Did
1 week. It's about a week. Yeah.
1 week.
Imagine.
Yeah.
And can you imagine, every day, during the entire day, there is poetry reading in a cafe.
Yes.
No? In a government building. I forget the name of that government building. Outside. No, it's like a cafe, outdoor.
Yes.
Yeah. Every day. And people would just go there and recite their poems.
Yes.
And there is a good audience. Yeah. So absolutely remarkable
I
how
think
they love
that
poetry.
cafe is outside the building called Plaza Los Leones or something.
Yes,
Or
something
like
like
that. The building
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Los Leones.
Have
or-
you been there?
yeah, a long time ago.
I was wondering why you didn't
No, I was in the first one. I
Well,
was in the
actually,
first
yeah,
one in
there has been a
Granada.
string.
Yeah.
The first ones who attended the Granada International Festival were Dr. Marjorie Vasco, Tita
Yes.
Marge, right?
Yes.
Used to be the kingpin of De La Salle University Literature, which was, during her heyday, performing even better than their basketball team. And after her was Dr. Alice
Alice
Sunkua. Yeah.
Yes.
I believe I was the third Filipino. And then now Jim, and in your February festival this year, Jim, who were the other prominent foreign or international poets in attendance?
The one that I particularly remember is the one from Chile. He too is revered in Chile like Ernesto Cardenal. And this is Raúl Zorrita.
Zorrita.
Yeah. Oh, and he's quite old already, and I think he has some kind of Parkinson's thing.
okay.
But wow, when he recites his poem from memory, he recites from memory.
Like someone
Yeah.
we
Like
know.
someone we know.
From memory.
And later
It's so
this
impressive.
evening we will be treated to such feat. So, would this guy be a Pablo Neruda in the making?
Yes,
In the
he would be
footsteps?
someone like that.
Neruda.
They're very good friends. Ernesto Cardinal
Inabutan
and
niya.
Raul
Oo,
Zurita.
Cardinal.
Contemporary.
Yeah, contemporaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, terrific performer. Yeah.
There was also, and you were talking about the gym when you arrived, no? When you returned, one of the famous features of that festival in Granada is the Carnival de Poesía.
Yes,
Ah,
the Carnaval
Carnaval,
Poesía. Yeah, that one is absolutely memorable too. There is a procession with something like ati-atihan,
Yeah.
dancers, masks, different costumes, very colorful. They're dancing in the street. Then there's this time at the head of the procession is a coffin that they are carrying. It's a symbolic coffin, and you know what?
In a coach, no? In the
Yes,
black coach, like a
yes,
hearse. Yeah.
And supposedly it's a symbolic burial of arrogance.
Yeah.
The arrogance of power.
Oh, I love
The
it.
arrogance of wealth.
So it's also performance
Yeah, it's
tricks,
also
parang
performance.
collective performance.
During the entire
The
procession.
procession goes through all
Yeah.
the streets until it reaches, I think, the bay or the lake.
Yes.
The lake, yeah.
That's
and
right.
there's a gestural interment
Yes.
of negative feelings and in
That's
this case,
right.
power. And then they say, long live poetry. Viva
Yeah.
poesía.
Viva la
Viva
poesía.
la poesía. Muerto a la
Yeah.
whatever. Poder.
The other remarkable feature is every street corner, there are hundreds of people in the street. Every street corner, a poet would ascend a stage on a vehicle, he by himself, or she by herself. And
Carroza. Yeah, it's a carroza.
It's a carroza.
Again, it's
Yeah.
something that you can
Yeah.
mount here at Tricks, here or in Cebu where you're so
should, we
popular,
should.
you know.
Yes.
You bring poetry to the masses. Imagine if we make a procession through Tondo with this carroza and then every street corner
With our own
Oh,
coffin,
oh,
and you will be inside.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it will
right.
be not so
making
symbolic
beautiful
burial of
eyes.
arrogance.
Yeah.
Just to be at midnight. A poet will ascend the carroza
Yes.
and recite the poem.
Yes.
I think this is a good point as any to for us to show some of the pictures of Jimmy going up that carroza, getting out of the coffin.
Oh,
and
there.
going up. There's the indigenous.
That's
parang
part of the
costume.
procession. Yeah.
They
Beautiful
invite
costumes.
mga cultural communities from
Yes.
elsewhere outside the capital.
Yes.
Yeah. Parang ang ati-atihan or
Very lively. But when the poet recites his poem, they all fall silent. Ay, sorry.
there
my
is
God.
some poet.
Hey, who is
There
that?
What is this? Oh, yeah.
What's
Look,
there?
oh. Yeah, it's a street corner. The poet ascends the makeshift stage
Oh, that's
atop
so
the.
wonderful.
Ah, that's
There is
Ernesto
Ernesto
Cardinal.
Cardinal, the famous
Yes.
poet,
Yeah.
famous
You see,
liberation theology.
absolutely, very charming. Yeah.
I also have a
About
photograph
him.
with him. And this is Fernando de Asis,
Yeah.
the
Francis.
organizer, the
Yeah, he's
the
the
director
organizer.
of the festival.
Yeah, he's the head. And that's,
Who did you pick up?
Yeah, Condabelli.
Yeah, Condabelli.
She's also quite an attraction
She's
to
a
the
fixture,
crowd.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's the most famous lady poet.
That's my wife.
There's Mercy. The
And that's
inspiration
the
of the
monument
muse.
to Ruben de Rio. Yeah.
This is in Managua.
In
Yeah,
Managua.
this
That's
was
in Managua.
Who
That's
is this?
Raul Zorita.
This is
from
a famous
Chile.
poet from
Yeah.
Chile.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
This is another set of pictures. We're going to get to
That's
this
a different
topic.
one. Yeah.
It's another international festival, also in Latin America. This is in Medellin, Colombia.
That's right.
Look, the amphitheater gets filled of about 5,000 people
Yeah.
listening to you.
I know.
And you notice in this picture, it
It's
was raining,
but they
nobody
stay.
leaves.
Yeah, they stay.
Nobody leaves. They came ready with their umbrellas and raincoats.
Yeah.
Uh,
Who is
that's
this,
Okemwa from Kenya. Yeah, at Medellin. Yeah.
This is Medellin,
That's,
Colombia.
I forget her name, but she was very lovely.
It is very lovely, yeah.
Yeah, there.
As you can see,
reciting.
Dr. Abad was doing us proud, being in the national costume, reading to Latin Americans.
That's another group of poets, but that's in Granada.
Oh,
That's
this is in Granada again.
That's the one
Okay,
in
great,
Granada.
great.
Yes.
Terrific. So, well, here, as you've seen in the pictures, those are two far-flung literary festivals, both very prestigious, both occurring in Latin America. One in Colombia, that's in Medellin, one in Nicaragua, that's in Granada, the cities. No? And I believe that our last representative or Philippine delegate to Medellin only last year
Yes.
was our friend
Muki.
Muki
Yeah,
Katigbak,
Muki
a
Katigbak
very
La
young
Cuesta.
poet.
Yes.
And she was quite a hit.
Oh, yes.
It was a good thing she brought her husband. It was otherwise they might not have let her go anymore. You know.
I would imagine.
I hear that my compadre Sarge La Cuesta had his hands full,
Oh, yeah.
sending off everyone, you know, from
Perhaps Sarge
getting
was,
more than an autograph from his
yeah.
lovely wife,
Oh,
my
yeah.
comadre.
Sarge might have felt insecure there.
He functioned as a bodyguard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Good
I
job,
think
Sarge.
we have about 2 minutes left in the first half. Time flies so fast. How do you characterize, let's say, the differences between the two festivals, Jim?
You know, it must be a Latin American, shall we say, trait. It's innate, no? That love for poetry, both in Colombia and in Nicaragua. Crowds of people, yeah, in public places.
Yes.
In Medellin, we went to more public places than in Nicaragua.
Yes,
And it's the same reception.
Yes.
The people, it's just unbelievable.
They have readings in
Yeah.
what would be something like our MRT stations. You know.
Yes.
People are
That's
coming
right.
out and then they'd
Yeah.
see these poets
Yeah.
on stage and they will stop and they will
They will.
go
Yeah.
through the whole performance.
Yeah, I wish it must be, I wonder whether it could be part of our Spanish heritage.
That's what I was
that kind
wondering.
of thing.
Do you think it has
Yeah.
something to do with the Spanish language? Can one claim that it's more bagay for poetry? That's why people live their poetry?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a theory
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
worth considering,
Yeah.
but
But anyway, a Russian would read and then they translate
yes.
as part of the reading. Japanese, in Japanese, and then somebody would come up and recite the same poem in Spanish. Yeah, they were ready all the time for that. Yeah, and people listen. People listen. That's the
Yeah.
remarkable
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, and of course, afterwards, when the event is over, they surround you and ask for your
Yeah,
photographs,
yeah.
students, and
Yeah.
yeah. And I must not forget there was a carpenter by profession, old man. He also recited this poem.
Galing.
Yeah, and he had his own little book of poems. A carpenter. Yeah. So, in other words, it's pretty widespread.
I believe we've run out of time in our first half of tonight's wonderful episode. I will announce it here and now, though, that upon resumption, what we'd like to have is Jimmy Abad reciting from memory one of the poems he performed in Nicaragua. No? So when we come back from the break, we will have Jimmy reciting one of his poems, and then we discuss some more about International Poetry Fest, and maybe towards the end of the show, we can ask him for another one. And while you perform,
Trixie
Silent
will perform
performance.
too.
in any case, okay, we've run out of time for the first half. We'll see you in a minute.